We are a little more than 6 weeks away from Election Day, and Governor Kemp is bringing in some outside help as he hopes to secure that second term. Joining me now is Todd, moderator of NBC's Meet the Press. And Chuck, on Tuesday, the governor will campaign in the Atlanta suburbs with Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin. So what are your thoughts on bringing him in and also doing so in the suburbs of Atlanta, where Stacey Abrams, his Democratic challenger, has an advantage?
Well, I think the idea of bringing Glenn Youngkin around is that there's a perception that he performed better than the average Republican in the suburbs here where I am in Washington, D.C. and Northern Virginia. Now, the numbers actually show he didn't really improve. He didn't really overperform much. What really got him the governor's race was the Republican base just came out in bigger numbers than the Democratic base. But the perception is on the schools issue in particular, particularly during COVID, there was a lot of anger about school closings in Virginia. So Glenn Youngkin sort of became the symbol of, hey, he's the Republican that figured out how to talk about schools and use it as an issue. So I think that's the reason. If you're Governor Kemp, you want to bring Youngkin in, you want to have that conversation, you want to have a schools conversation, you want to talk to the suburbs, anything he can do to chip away at her lead. Look, this shows you, I think, where that Kemp feels pretty good about where he's at. He doesn't have to campaign in the other part of the state. He's hoping now to just live in the suburbs. He doesn't have to win them. He just can't lose them by as much, for instance, as some of the Republican Senate candidates lost them in 2020.
All right, so let's talk about another big race here in Georgia, the race between Senator Raphael Warnock and Herschel Walker. A lot of folks talking about the possibility of this going to a runoff because of the Libertarian candidate who's polling at around 3%. So the theory is that Kemp voters aren't choosing Walker, but the Libertarian candidate instead. But if this does go to a runoff, what do those voters do? Do they come around to Walker? Do they vote Warnock, or do they just stay home?
Honestly, I'm not going to pretend I know on the runoff, because runoff dynamics are so. What's the national makeup of the Senate, right? Will the runoff decide control of the Senate, or is it just going to decide control of that Senate seat, right? That dynamic would change things. Was it overall a better Democratic night or a better Republican night in November? That dynamic will change things. How about the fact that this runoff's a month earlier than the runoff that was 2 months before, right? So, I would think I think in the runoff, if it's not for Senate control, I'd rather be Warnock than Walker. I think if the race is going to decide Senate control, you just don't know, because I think there'll be so much money that's poured into here, into Georgia in the runoff in order to affect it. So I'll tell you this. I was a Democratic operative who swears they know what's going to happen in Georgia, believes that Warnock can avoid a runoff, and more importantly, that Warnock, no matter what, will be the leading vote getter going into the runoff. So we'll see. We will see. All right,
so let's end on a bit of a different note here. The Atlanta Braves are going to be visiting the White House on Monday as President Joe Biden honors them for their World Series win. Is this something that still matters to teams and fans, especially now when it seems that everyone is so politically divided?
You know who it means a lot to? The team and the family that goes there, okay? I mean, yes, politics get involved. I've been at the White House for these, when I was covering the White House day to day as my day job. The most fun days are the days that the teams come. They're like kids. You know, are there 2 or 3 players that look at it only through a political prism? There are. You know, and there'd be some that would not want to be there for Obama, or some that wouldn't be there for Bush or whatever. Look, Trump, I know, poisoned the well for a lot of these things because he makes these events more political. And I think that when a president tries to force a political response at these sporting things, it has made these athletes, you know, I think, pull back. Biden is trying to bring it back to sort of the old days of the way Reagan did it and Clinton did it, which is, you're the president of all the people, and we're honoring you at the White House, right? And I think ultimately most of the players that attend, that's what it's about. The fans may, you know, look at it through their own prism of politics, but the players love it. Don't take this away from the players. They get to see parts of the White House most of us never get to see. It's a pretty cool event for them.
Yeah, and I'm sure they're going to have a great time up there. Meet the Press with the South Carolina Congresswoman Nancy Mace and others airs Sunday morning at 10 o'clock on 11 Alive. Chuck, thank you so much.